NFL free agency is underway. Team RotoWire is breaking down all the biggest signings from day one of the NFL offseason. You'll join us as we analyze the best and worst deals, discuss fantasy football implications, and predict what is next in free agency. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Pool Genius and Edge Boost. I'm Jim Coventry, joined today by Anthony Cervino. Now, today's show will include, we're going to take a look at the top free agent signings. Some players we'll discuss. Sam Darnold, Davante Adams, yesterday's news, fine. Aaron Jones and Chris Godwin, plenty more. Anthony, we're excited everybody's with us today because, as we know, there's no offseason in the NFL. We had the Super Bowl a month and a day ago, and we've had time to prepare for free agency, and we're here. We finally made it. Now, it's not official till Wednesday, but the legal tampering period, the news is out. Anyway, we're excited everybody's here. Anthony and I will be doing a podcast on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast platform every Monday going forward. Normally, we're earlier in the day, but because of the free agency today, we waited for a while. And if you want breaking news throughout the free agent process, go to the RotoWire account on the X or Blue Sky, putting up player threads there. Also, breaking news videos on our socials, our YouTube channel. And again, all Matt RotoWire, nice and easy. Anthony Cervino, before we analyze the biggest signings, any quick hit thought on the day as it went so far?
Yeah, today was big. Not so much for skilled players, which we'll go over, but we've seen some offensive linemen like Laramie Tunsil change positions, some big defensive splashes. And once again, I feel like an early offseason winner. It seems like we do this every year. Chicago Bears, they win the offseason. Is this going to be the year where they finally win some games?
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about them in a little bit. Now, for point of reference, we are recording this at 5 Eastern on Monday, March 10th. So if you watch this later, there could be signings later in the day we're not aware of. But remember, you'll stay tuned to RotoWire because we'll be keeping up with things throughout the entire process of free agency. All right, let's go to the analyzing the biggest signings of the day. And Anthony, we're going to start out with quarterbacks. We got two signings as of this time. Sam Darnold goes to the Seahawks. 3 years. It's reported about $1 million. They didn't give an exact dollar figure the moment that I had looked at that. Now, here's what I want to point out. We saw Sam Darnold have a great overall season with the Vikings. It's like 37 touchdowns, 12 picks. It was solid. It was 4,300 yards. Numbers were great. Anthony, going into last season, I said, Darnold's not in a bad spot. He's going to be well protected behind a good Minnesota offensive line last year. I said that Kevin O'Connell's going to scheme up very quick passes. He's got Justin Jefferson. He had Jordan Addison. And then he also was going to get TJ Hockenson back late in the season. So I thought Darnold could do well. This isn't that. Now, before we get to that, there were about 7. When I look back at the season, there were like 7 teams that could bring pressure that played against last year's Sam Darnold. And remember I said those big touchdown numbers? He was 6 touchdowns, 7 picks against a team that could put pressure. That's always been a red flag with Darnold. His completion percentage went down about 6 points. I know quarterbacks are bothered by pressure. I get that. We're going to Seattle now. And Anthony, when we talk about Seattle, this offensive line is nowhere near in the league that Minnesota was, even without Darisaw. This is a maybe average, probably below average. They lost their weapons. They got Smith and Jigba still. Metcalf's gone. Lockett was aging. That wouldn't have mattered anyway. They really don't have a high-end tight end, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on Darnold as he gets into this new venture in Seattle?
No, you brought up what he did last year. Obviously, recency bias. Sam Darnold did not look good. But for the most part, Sam Darnold was a very good quarterback, especially in fantasy. Things are going to be different in Seattle, as you said. You know, if it was last year and Darnold comes here and they have, they're 3 deep at wide receiver, nice running backs, that's not the case. You're left with JSN, which is great. But look at the rest of the team around him, wide receiver-wise. This Seattle Seahawks team, they have work to do this offseason and maybe bolster this wide receiver room. That right now it's JSN, Derek Young, Jake Bobo. They have some work to do. Now, I also think, Darnold last year, he was 8th in pass attempts. They're not going to throw the ball, I don't think, that much in Seattle. I think with McDonald as the head coach, they want to play good defense and run the football and maybe protect Sam Darnold a little bit more. And Seattle's always run the ball well. They have 2 very capable running backs. So I am going to discount Sam Darnold in fantasy. You go from Justin Jefferson and a slew of weapons and Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota I feel like he might be a little bit like a game manager. I do think he's an upgrade over Geno Smith, but I think he's going to be more of a game manager role in Seattle.
Before we project out where people may or may not take him in fantasy drafts, I will say Clint Kubiak is his offensive coordinator. Now, if you remember, Clint Kubiak coached with the Saints last year. And before the Saints had a bunch of devastating injuries, remember that crazy start to the season the Saints had. Why was it good? They didn't have a great offensive line. They had a quarterback in Derek Carr. In some ways, you could say he's similar to Darnold when it comes to pressure. But they rolled him out and they used bootlegs and play action. And Derek Carr had some success. Again, then the injuries all piled up and everything went sideways. So if there is a world where things work for Darnold, that's kind of it. But remember, we mentioned earlier, the weapons here are an issue. Where at least in an early point of last season, Rashid Shaheed was playing at a high level. Chris Olave before all the concussions hit. So Juwan Johnson. So actually the weapons were probably better there. So now all that said, Anthony, in terms of fantasy, where are we going to value roughly Sam Darnold?
Now, again, QB8 finish in points per game last year, all the discounts going into Seattle. I know, there's underdog drafts going on right now, and I'm trying to pull up his ADP. I feel like we have to significantly discount Darnold in fantasy drafts. He's going as a 278th player, looks like off the board right now. I'm not sure where that puts him round-wise. But in this situation, I don't know if I'm taking Sam Darnold in my top 20 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I am outside my top 20 as well. And he could finish dangerously low because if he implodes, and that is firmly in the scenario, we have seen him implode in a lot of different NFL destinations. Last year, you said you kind of intimated earlier. We saw that last game against the Detroit Lions. We saw the playoff game against the Rams. And they just said, you know what? We're going to put all the pressure we can on Darnold because we don't think he can handle it. And he couldn't handle it. And like you said, they got a running game, and that could benefit him. Mike McDonald, you also mentioned, second year running that defense. Certainly some merit there. But like you said, it's a low-volume offense, not a lot of weapons. I don't trust Sam Darnold at all. Outside my top 20 quarterbacks, I have very little optimism. Maybe we're two of the biggest pessimists on him, or maybe we'll come to find out later we're right in the crowd, but neither of us have optimism for Sam Darnold. But hey, happy the young man got paid. That's always good for him, so he's got that. All right, next quarterback, and the last one as of this point of free agency, Justin Fields goes to the Jets, 2 years, $40 million. So $20 million a year. That's really backup money. It's nothing special at all. And here's what I'll say about this. Look, Justin Fields last year, he ran for 4.76 yards per year. That wasn't good for him because he was normally a big explosive runner. But Pittsburgh was really hiding him. And I want to point that out because Pittsburgh wanted to make sure he wasn't making mistakes. They wanted their defense to win. They wanted their running game to win. So that was important. Now, ball security has been an issue for Fields. He's fumbled 44 times in 50 career games. On the Jets, here's the one thing we don't know. What are they going to ask him to do? If I'm the coach, which I'm not, I'm going to go heavy RPO. If he's my quarterback, if he beats out Tyrod Taylor, I'm assuming right now he probably does, but that's not a guarantee. If you're going to go RPO, all right, you got Breece Hall. So you got the duo runners with Fields and Hall. And then you could scheme up some quick telegraph passes to Garrett Wilson, who could do a lot after the catch. You can make a real basic offense, half field reads because Justin Fields cannot read the field. So you would basically send, defined reads to where they're throwing to one side. Defenses might adjust. But again, with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, they might be able to do it. I think that's the only scenario where Fields gets going because he could run for a lot of yards here. But if they make him a passer, just say you're going to be a passer and a secondary runner, that's going to be a problem. What are your thoughts on Justin Fields?
Well, I was never a big Justin Fields guy. I always felt like he was like the highlight reel quarterback, the YouTube quarterback where he looks really good and really fun. But when it comes to winning football games, something's missing here with Justin Fields. Now, the good thing with the Jets, they have weapons. They have dudes. You mentioned Wilson. They have Breece Hall, who I think is going to be heavily featured. Maybe the offense runs through Breece, and that opens things up also for Justin Fields as well. They have Garrett Wilson. It's not like this is this is the Bears from a few years ago with Justin Fields. And they also have a pretty good defense. As far as where's the outlook for Justin Fields and the Jets, they might be a third place team in this division. I don't know if there's any progress here. I actually might see Justin Fields more of a downgrade from Aaron Rodgers, because the way Aaron Rodgers finished last season, he looked like he could still play and win football games. When it comes to fantasy, if Justin Fields is the starter, we know the 2 seasons where Justin Fields played at least 13 games, QB9 in fantasy points per game and QB5 in fantasy points per game. So fantasy-wise, I'm fine taking Justin Fields as a starter in fantasy. As far as NFL-wise, I just think this is the Jets. That it's just another Jets move.
The good news is the Jets did last year. They upgraded their line. Now some of those players are gone. Morgan Moses gone. Tyron Smith age up, but they drafted a rookie last year, tackle in the top 10. They brought in an interior line. So the line isn't going to be catastrophic in any way. So there's that. And you have to think they're going to use Fields running. Look, if any of you were going to take Anthony Richardson last year without him being able to pass and you were going to draft him, Fields, there's no difference. I know they're significantly bigger. I know you got 244-pound Richardson and Fields ain't that. But as a runner, there's no difference. They both can run for as many yards they want. We saw 1,140 yards out of Fields in 2022. So that's insane. So I say this. You draft him, assuming he falls to the quarterback too. You pair him, like we said it to Richardson last year. You draft if he falls, and then last year he didn't always fall. But if you happen to fall to quarterback too, you draft him there. You draft another partner quarterback with him, and then if your running quarterback works out like Fields, great. If not, you go with the other player. But I think you can't just go in saying Fields is my guy, and then I'm not doing anything else. Any final words on that?
Yeah, I agree with you here. Until we have a definitive who's the starter with the New York Jets, if you're doing any fantasy drafts, I think you kind of have to pump the brakes on where you are drafting Justin Fields. Like Jim said earlier, they could always bring in somebody else, or they have Tyrod, I believe, still under contract.
They do.
Who can ultimately win this job.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is going to be a quick, though. This is not a free agent move, but the Bills signed Josh Allen to a 6-year, $330 million contract. They have him until 2030. He's going to be 29 this year. We talked about his last preseason. Josh Allen is a very good quarterback. I'm not questioning that, but he's a running back. And he's going to be 30 next year. He's running about 130 times a year. He takes massive hits. Look, Cam Newton wore out. Dante Culpepper wore out back in the day. Allen is no more physical than them. I have to think that if he can't run, then I don't think he could just be a drop back passer and win. If he can't have that mobility, that is what makes him special. I am not sold that he has this great arm talent. I mean, arm talent, he has a cannon, but I mean, in terms of you can't just drop back and dissect defenses all day long. So I think it was crazy to sign him until 2030. Not that they had any options. Quick thought on that.
I mean, you know how I feel about Justin Fields. I mean, about Josh Allen. I'm with you, but at some point, how many off seasons am I going to go through waiting for this guy to break down until he finally breaks down? I think you have to pay him. They did what they had to do. But at what point do you think, he's getting older, he's taking a lot of hits. They signed Josh Palmer today. I don't feel like they're supporting him enough just in case he does break down this year or the year after. He doesn't have the stud support wide receivers like you would think they would put around him if they want to go chase the Super Bowl. I know I've said things on Twitter, on X, saying, they need if they want to go win a Super Bowl, they want to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, you need to go bring in one of these stud wide receivers or try to go get one. The argument is, well, Buffalo always has a number one offense. Yeah, until you get to the AFC title game.
This is going to sound like obvious, but it's not a matter of if Josh Allen's going to break down as a runner. It's a matter of when. He's not Steve Young where he's like evading. He's not Young to contact too. This is a guy that looks for contact. He will break down. It won't be in 2030. It's going to be way before that. Might not be this year, but they got him for 6 years. He is not going to be an elite player in 6 years. If it was Patrick Mahomes, different player. Anyway, we move to our running back. At this point, we have one. I'm not counting Elijah Mitchell. Sorry, we're not going to talk about Elijah Mitchell. It's not his show today.
Rajay P. running.
And some other people, I think we're going to kind of take a little pass on those guys. Although, hey, they're making all this money and they deserve it. But let's just talk about Aaron Jones. This obviously re-signs with the Vikings. So, yeah, free agency, but not really. And he re-signed actually before the tampering period. That was done on Sunday. 2 years, $20 million. Now, the Vikings had to be really happy with what they got out of Aaron Jones last year. 4.5 yards per carry. But realistically, he had a great role as a runner, as a receiver, over 1,500 yards, 1,546, 306 touches, big workload. I had told people he had the hamstring injury in 2023. But if you take the 5 years around that, he does not miss a lot of time. There's only a couple of games, like in a 5-year period, except for 2023. So he was durable, and he showed that again. But here's what I want to point out, Anthony. Now, Jones is going to be 30 this year, I believe. And I lost it on my note, but it's actually laser, but he's going to be 30. And he slowed down as the season went. He got banged up a little bit. He had at least 88 yards in 6 of the first 11 games. He only hit 73 once in his last 7 games. Now, I know he was nicked up, but he's going to get nicked up, taking all that work. Now, we've already heard the Vikings say they're going to get another running back. They said this earlier, so they're going to. Jones is on the decline. I love Aaron Jones, but he's on the decline. And in terms of fantasy, we're not getting that 1,546 this year. We're going to probably get that second half player at some point. So unless he goes outside of running back 18, as much as I love him, I can't take the jump on a 30-year-old back that's going to just keep kind of scaling down. Thoughts on Aaron Jones?
Yeah, if you look at Aaron Jones last year, for where we drafted him and the production we got was pretty good. RB20 in fantasy points per game. But this was not the same Aaron Jones from earlier in his career who was ultra efficient with Green Bay. Where Aaron Jones thrived was opportunities, carries, targets, red zone opportunities, and, your yards, receiving yards, receptions, rushing yards. His efficiency completely regressed. So if Aaron Jones continues to get that immense opportunity he got last year, and we're drafting him around that, what you said, RB 18 to 20 range, I think I'm willing to do that. Now, Minnesota, their running back depth chart, you got Ty Chandler, Cam Akers, a free agent. That's all you have. They're going to bring other running backs in. But as a 1-year rental, if this is not a dynasty league, but a redraft best ball, at the right price, I am more than willing to take Aaron Jones. Again, that right price, RB 18, RB 22. But I will not reach any higher than that.
And exactly with those numbers. I always do on my notes, I do a best case, a worst case, and a bottom line. My best case is stays pretty healthy, top 15 he finishes, but I'm not drafting him there. I think a ceiling. So like you said, you draft him about running back 18 to 20, because I see the worst case scenario being as low as running back 30 if he regresses, and then there's a little more of a timeshare than we want. So just be careful where you're drafting him. Hey, if you ever had your debit card declined or had to call your bank at 3 a.m. in Vegas, Edge Boost is the first consumer-facing online bank dedicated to the gaming industry. There are numerous benefits to using Edge Boost. $250K per day in debit deposits, unlimited withdrawals, cash back on sports betting, DFS sweeps. Deposit $25 to get $25. 100% approval for all gaming activity. Financial segmentation and discretion and responsible gaming. Compatible today for prediction markets, iCasino, DFS, sports betting, lottery, brick and mortar casinos, horse racing and sweeps. No transaction reviews or account freezes. You visit edgeboost.bet today and you use the promo code ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD at edgeboost.bet. Anthony Cervino, we do have some wide receivers that we are going to talk about today. So a couple of these are going to be, one's going to be a franchise tag, which are only 2 tags all year. Trey Smith, the guard from Kansas City, and then we'll talk about T. Higgins in a moment. But we're going to start out with Chris Godwin, and it went a little while into the first day of free agency before Godwin re-signed with the Bucs. So I don't know what the negotiations were, but it was not a big contract, Anthony. 3 years, $66 million. So he took $22 million a year. He took a hometown discount. That's realistically what he did. And it seems very clear that Godwin must really want to play there. Now, Godwin Last year, we know he had that dislocated ankle. Hope the young man's healed well. It's not an ACL, so this should be, we hope that he's back very, very healthy from this one. But he was on pace for his fourth season with at least 83 catches, 1,023 yards, and it would have been bigger than that. He was rolling short and intermediate routes. Now, last year, Liam Cohen coached him, and we talked in the preseason, Anthony, last year. We said Liam Cohen could use some of those Rams concepts, and Chris Godwin could have, one of the best seasons of career. He had a 1,300, like maybe in 2020, 2019, something like that. But we said, yeah, Godwin could be a player that could get back. And sure enough, he was looking like he was there. And then the injury hit. Now, Liam Cohen's gone. So that's not, that's not a positive. But that said, Baker Mayfield has great chemistry with Godwin. And remember, the Jarvis Landry days when Baker played with Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry averaged 990 yards when healthy, when both of those two were healthy for a couple of years. So he has a history of being able to connect with slot receivers. Mike Evans certainly does his damage. Now, Godwin had missed 5 games over the previous 3 seasons, in addition to a half a season last year. What are your thoughts on Chris Godwin re-upping with the Bucs? And again, that was 3 years, only $66 million.
Yeah, certainly left money on the table, certainly took a hometown discount, but I like the move. Chris Godwin staying put. Last year, you bring up the type of season he was on pace for. He managed 19.7 fantasy points per game in 7 games. That would be his most since 2019, where he finished as a wide receiver 2 in points per game. 5 touchdowns, his most since 2021. He was on pace for a monster year. Now, as much as I like Liam Cohen, do I still think that Chris Godwin could be in that power slot role and still thrive? I absolutely do. The biggest issue I have with Chris Godwin is, are we going to get a healthy Chris Godwin? Because a healthy Chris Godwin with Baker Mayfield, I think he could be one of the better fantasy values, because you still have Chris Evans there, or Mike Evans. You still have Jalen McMillan, who looked like a complete stud down the stretch. We might be able to buy Chris Godwin at a discount in our fantasy drafts and even in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. And last year I was getting Godwin. Did I get him in the 4th-ish round, 4th-ish, 5th round? He got a little helium late in the draft season. I think I was getting him 5th round earlier, and I had to go into the 4th round late in draft season to get him. But I'm willing to go there again. If that's where he falls, I'm willing to go there. People do see him as an injury risk, and he's 28, and yeah, he's missed time. But you know what? We've seen the upside, and I'm buying into Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is a good offensive line, and those tackles play well for him. And so that it really helps out. So, yeah, so overall, yeah, look, I'm going to view him as a wide receiver 2, and that's how I'm going to draft him. The worst case scenario, like you said, if there's somehow the dislocated ankle doesn't come back right, that's going to be a problem, and that would be a problem. To me, in my mind, with the limited we've heard, I don't think there's a concern for this year. It really wasn't a show me contract. It was a 3-year deal. So the team had to have medicals on him that tells me that he's fine, because otherwise it would have been a 1-year prove it deal. And so there had to be medicals showing he's okay. I would have to believe. Again, I'm not in the house. I'm not a doctor on that. So yeah, I'm going to go with him there. It sounds like you're all in about the same price range on him.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I do want to bring up is I have the early underdog ADP in front of me. Chris Godwin's going as the 64th player off the board. McMillan as the 81st. Do you now, with Godwin staying put, do we now see Jalen McMillan drop a little bit?
Yeah, I think we have to, because I don't know that this is going to be a 3-receiver offense. I think when they have to throw, there'll be a 3-receiver offense. I think otherwise we're going to see the base is going to be 2. Yeah. We see a lot of 21 personnel. I think 2 tight ends on the field and 2 receivers. So I agree with you, Anthony. I think that we're going to have to devalue Jalen McMillan a bit. As good as he played last year, it's not Chris Godwin. He certainly isn't Mike Evans. And so somebody's got to take a hit there. And unfortunately, it'll be at the expense of Jalen McMillan. Now, look, the draft prices you're in, it's going to acclimate. It's going to factor this all in. And so McMillan may end up still being a great value where he ultimately falls. But today, if you're drafting, like you said, Anthony, you can't take him today at that ADP, because it's baking in that he was going to have more of a role than we might think. T. Higgins, franchise tag by the Bengals. We don't know what the deal is for getting a long-term deal done, but we know for 1 year he's there. Real simple with T. Higgins. Talented player. I don't think anybody questions that. And last year when he was on the field, and there's the key, on the field, right? This guy misses quite a bit of time. He was averaging, he scored at least 18 PPR points in 7 of 12 games. That's high scoring. And he only had 2 games with fewer than 9 PPR points. So he was really playing well, but missed time. Missed 5 games in 23, 5 games in 2024. You go back to 2022, he had those 2 games where he was healthy, but he played a total of 11 snaps and had goose eggs, and he had missed games there. Higgins, as good as he is, Anthony, he's never had 1,100 yards in a season, and he's never had more than 110 targets. Now, last year, he had the 7 touchdowns, but otherwise, he usually does get about 5. So normally he does score some, but the yardage and where he'll get drafted, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was never a big T. Higgins guy, but last year, he was a completely different player. He was, despite 12 games played, still the wide receiver 5 in fantasy points per game. He was hyper productive last year. This is a Bengals offense that they leaned on Burrow and throwing the football to win football games, whatever games they won, because this defense obviously has been on a downfall since that Super Bowl run. And I think we're going to see that continue this year. I love that T. Higgins stayed put. I don't think there was anywhere in the NFL he could have gone where it would have been an upgrade for me in fantasy. Even though he shares an offense with Jamar Chase, they throw the ball at such a high rate, and you still have Joe Burrow as your quarterback. I don't know who T. Higgins is. Yeah, he's had some games where he was the guy because Jamar Chase was hurt. But, I in these situations where we see the 1A, 1B receiver, sometimes the B leaves, and then he struggles because now he's getting that top coverage. I know who T. Higgins is with Joe Burrow and what he could give me. I don't know who T. Higgins is somewhere else as an alpha, just like how I felt about Brandon Ayuk if he would have left San Francisco, or what Brandon Ayuk might be this year. So I'm fine with him staying put. As far as where I'm going to draft him, I think where the ADP is now, like we could be looking at T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. I don't want to say both going in the first round, but it would not shock me if Chase goes top of the first and we see T. Higgins go back in the second. But that is way too rich for my blood because in recent memory, anytime we see 2 wide receivers from the same team go round 1 and round 2, the round 2 guy has not worked out. Jalen Waddle, I'm drawing a I think T. Higgins a few years ago didn't work out. There was quite a few receivers in the, Devonta Smith sometimes doesn't work out. When a couple of years ago, he went in the second round. So I'm kind of skittish on that.
Yeah, again, it's really the injury history. And last year I was out on T. Higgins. It was the first time I had typically been somewhat in on T. Higgins. Last year I was like, you know what? Injuries are too much. I can't count on him. And it paid off. Look, he was great when he was on the field, like we said earlier, but he missed 5 games again. And you can't take 5 games. You can miss 2 and it's fine. You can't miss 5. And so, yeah, all that said, if he's drafted in the and he's going to be drafted, like you said, late second, early third. That's where he's going. He's going to be going there. I'm out there. If in a league, everybody's squeamish on his injury history, falls to the 3-4 turn, we might do a little different calculus there, but he's not going to fall there. So I guess we don't really need to argue that one much further. Let's move next to Davante Adams. Goes to the Rams, 2 years, $46 million. So $23 million a year. Again, not a big contract. And, so Cooper Kupp, obviously, they're looking to move him along. My guess is they don't get a trade partner and they got to just cut bait on him. I don't know that for sure, but that is my definite guess here. They go from one old guy to another, but a very different old guy. Davante Adams was 87th percentile yards after the catch last year, still playing at a very high level. And Anthony, after that week 13 bye that Adams had, the rest of the way, he averaged 96 yards and a touchdown and 11 targets. So the production could still be there. And look, you get him the ball, he produces. Here's my question. I assume Sean McVay has a plan. And why do I say that? Sean McVay has always had his receivers block their behinds off. Cooper Kupp, I say he's aged quickly because of all the hits from linebackers he took as a blocker. Yeah, of course, he took receiver hits, but he took a total huge number of collisions as a blocker. Well, Davante Adams has never blocked. I mean, obviously he has blocked, but he's not a blocker. He's not used as a blocker. He will, he's not going to be deployed to him. So Sean McVay is going to have to do what Liam Cohen did with the Bucs last year. Say, okay, I got the system where we use receivers to block, but I need to use these players in a different way. Like Mike Evans, you weren't going to make Mike Evans block all day. They definitely didn't do that. So as long as McVay is open to say, I'm going to change my offense to fit Davante Adams. Then we're okay. Because think about Matthew Stafford. Stafford could read a defense like that, nanosecond, and he gets the ball out. And what does Davante Adams do? He gets open very quickly. And you still got Puka Nacua there. Now, I assume there's no way that Nacua is not the number one because he's like the long-term guy. And I said this last year when the Texans brought in Stephon Diggs. Yeah. I said immediately before the market corrected, I go, there's no way he's the number one. Nico Collins is going to be their future. And then the market corrected like a month later. Same thing here. Davante Adams will not be the number one, but I don't think the market will make that mistake. Anyway, thoughts on Adams moving to the Rams?
I love the move. And, I want to scale back to the Cooper Kupp situation. Signing in Davante Adams, it's not like you're getting younger. It's not like you're getting him significantly cheaper. To me, the writing is on the wall. The Rams know what they have and what they don't have in Cooper Kupp. And I hate using the word wash, but maybe he's closer to being washed than not, which is why we have Davante Adams, who might be I thought he was one of the best value veteran wide receivers for a team. Hey, you want a plug and play guy you could potentially go chase a championship with. Davante Adams was my number one guy. Now, we know Puka Nacua is a target vacuum. Davante Adams, right? If you're looking at Davante Adams, you look at his numbers down the stretch. I get he shared an offense with Garrett Wilson, but Aaron Rodgers force-fed Davante Adams the way Stafford force-fed Puka Nacua. I do think we're going to see a target decrease from Davante Adams. But when you're drafting Davante Adams, you have to remember this. I get Puka Nacua. He played all 17 games in the rookie year, but he was on quite a few injury reports. He missed a bunch of games last year. If there is ever a time, if Puka Nacua goes down, I think Davante gets that target share. We can't obviously draft based on injuries, but if I'm assessing Davante Adams on the board next to another player, I'm going to think about that.
There's no doubt. Now, Adams had an outlier with 140. I'm wrong player. Adams has had about 140 targets a year on average over the last 5 years, but he's had years at 180 and 175. So he has seen an insane target share. So the injuries are right because Nacua blocks as well, and he takes this like Kupp takes a lot of beating there. I'm putting him on 120 targets. I don't think there's, unless Nacua gets hurt for a long period, I think that's going to be a normal target share. It's not going to be this gargantuan. And Adams has only caught like 58% of his passes the last couple years, but it could have been bad quarterback play. So I think we could write that off because I don't think that's him being a problem. I think it's really the quarterbacks that he's been with. So I think we could say we're okay there. Even Aaron Rodgers was not Aaron Rodgers. So last thing then, and even if you said this, I want to make sure we get this clear. Where are you drafting him if you were going to go after Davante Adams?
I'm probably viewing Davante Adams right now. And here's, I guess what I want to. Last year, we saw Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. They were being drafted extremely close. I don't know if we're going to see that. Like, I'm willing to draft Davante Adams 4th round, maybe 5th round. But if his ADP starts creeping up to that 3rd round, and we could see it, we could even see back of the 2nd round because people are going to see, hey, I was drafting Kupp in the back of the 2nd round last year. Oh, he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, but he's getting McVay and Stafford. I'm not going to go that high on Davante Adams.
No, you are right. The market is going to overvalue Adams. They're going to say it's Matthew Stafford. They're going to say, they 2 wide receivers can put up elite numbers. It's Sean McVay. And that's all going to happen here. And I'm not throwing shade on Adams. Adams has not regressed much. He's not the guy he was when he was 26, but who is, right? But he is not that version. And like I said, if you go from 160 targets to 120, that's a big, big hit. Now, I will say this, though. Puka scored like 3 touchdowns last year. There is a very good chance that the key red zone player is Adams. I think that's definitely something to think about there. So all that said, I'm with you. If he falls to a later round, like the 4th or so, as a wide receiver too, I'm fine with it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are going to pay up for him. I won't like you. I'm not going to be on board on that. DK Metcalf gets traded. Steelers, 2nd round pick. They made other pick swaps, but we'll just say 2nd rounder because the rest of it was just trade off a 6th and a 7th and this and that and the other. Now, remember, DK Metcalf in 2020 at 1,300 yards, but otherwise, he's usually 950 to 1,100 yards. So there's that. But here's the thing, Anthony. He goes to the Steelers, And right now, as of this recording, the Steelers are looking to find a quarterback. We don't know who that's going to be. It could be Aaron Rodgers, maybe. We don't know, but it's drying up fast, the market. We'll see who they get. But that said, Arthur Smith still runs this offense. They still have a defense that can play pretty well. They want to run the ball, even though we don't know who their second running backs will be if they're bringing Najee back. Doesn't matter. But the thing is, Arthur Smith's offense, yeah, you can get one receiver putting up enough targets to do well. But they got George Pickens. And I know George Pickens seemed to be a problem last year, but they're kind of similar players, Metcalf and Pickens. And so ultimately, you're hoping in an Arthur Smith offense that your top receiver gets like 115, 120 targets. These guys are fairly equal in my mind. So we could see them both top out in the 90 range. And for me, good luck finding a wide receiver 3 out of that. Thoughts?
Yeah, DK Pickens, both 6'3", very close in terms of weight. I know DK has maybe 10 more pounds on him. They both run vertical routes. They're both deep threats. It's almost like they're the same player, but DK's a little bit bigger, maybe Pickens a little bit faster. If you told me, I'm going to give you DK Metcalf and George Pickens and Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, or any other quarterback, most other quarterbacks, I said, okay, cool. But the Arthur Smith offense, we don't know who. They lost Fields. They're probably not bringing back Russell Wilson. What's left here? Who's going to be threatened? So you got the offensive coordinator we know wants to run the ball, and then we don't know who the quarterback is. Maybe it's Daniel Jones. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins. We don't know. And until I know who this quarterback is, I don't know how much I'm buying in. And I love George Pickens. I don't know how much I'm buying into either one of these guys. And quite frankly, even if it's Aaron or Kirk Cousins, it's still an Arthur Smith offense. These two players do a lot of the same things well. They still have Freiermuth, and they want to run the football. Jaylen Warren catch the ball in the backfield. Is there a world where neither one of these guys break 110 targets? Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. 90. I think they're at 90 each. Because the tight ends, the tight ends, and it might not all be Freiermuth, but the tight ends are in. You said Warren. They're moving that ball around, and they're not going to throw a lot. And if that defense plays well, there's even less passive. So I'm with you. Yeah. And you know what? So bottom line, I've got Metcalf as a wide receiver 3. And if he doesn't fall to like the 6th or 7th, I'm not taking him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd rather have Pickens. I'm more of a Pickens guy over DK Metcalf. And for years, it's where, fantasy Twitter, the community, they're chasing that one big year DK had. I think I'd rather have George Pickens at this point, but I don't know if I'm taking either one after the 5th round.
Man, no,
that's about my bar. And last year I was willing to draft Pickens, maybe a round or so higher.
No, I'm with you on that. Hey, we're going to talk more free agency after we take a short break. All right, let's talk about a couple quick hits here, Anthony. We'll got to get moving here. De'Ami Brown, 1 year, $10 million. All I'll say is this. Up until the NFL playoffs, he had 2 games at more than 35 yards. He had a 57 early in the season. He had a 56 in like week 16 or so. In the NFL playoffs, 3 games, averages 4.5 catches, 76 yards and 6 targets. Look good. But he was used on short passes, 15th percentile average up the target, but he was 93rd percentile after the catch. Didn't from his athletic profile, I didn't think he had that in him, but he certainly did. But it was a playoff run, and that's exactly what it was. And it's a 1 year, $10 million deal. But he goes to play with the Jaguars and Liam Cohen. Now, he only played De'Ami Brown about 22% in the slot, so he's mostly an outside guy. I don't know how good the fit's going to be here. So what are your quick thoughts on De'Ami Brown?
He flashed in a situation with Washington where they needed somebody. Somebody had to get those targets. Now you're in an offense. I get they moved on from Ingram and Christian Kirk. I like Brenton Strange. I think he's probably going to be a starter here. I like Brian Thomas Jr. Can he compete with Gabe Davis? He probably beats out Parker Washington, but I honestly, I think he's just a guy. And I think Jacksonville is a realistic landing spot for Cooper Kupp. I don't think they're done adding pass catchers. And I think there's going to be one of those teams that might overpay for a veteran.
All I'll say is this, and I agree with you, but if I'm going to give one coach the benefit of the doubt, it's Liam Cohen. And if Liam Cohen sought out De'Ami Brown as a plan for him, we know that he's very good at scheming the ball in the receiver's hands. So I think I will definitely draft him outside the top 50 wide receivers, top 50, top 50. But that would only be if, with the hope, and I'd be willing to cut him right away. but hopefully we would know in August what that case was. So would you take a lottery ticket outside the top 50 receivers on him or no?
If they don't bring in somebody else, yes.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Exactly. 100% correct. And let's do a quick hit on Josh Palmer. Look, I'll tell you this. They needed him last year and with Chargers, and he came up small. 65 targets. He goes 39 for 584, 13th percentile yards after the catch. He dropped 7.7% of his targets. That was the 14th percentile. So he only caught 60% of the passes. I know we have some good followers on our X that pointed out, oh, he had this great separation rate. Look, they needed him. He was terrible. Now the Bills paid him 3 years, $36 million. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Bills once again coming up short at the wide receiver position, and he's a solid player. I think he had a year or two when he was healthy with Justin Herbert, where he was a solid fantasy producer. But remember, these were teams with the Chargers. They still had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and Josh Palmer was kind of a fill-in. Last year, when Josh Palmer could have carved out a prominent role, he couldn't, and he didn't. And now he's going to Buffalo, and you're sharing an offense with Shakir and Keon Coleman. Palmer might see a ton of playing time out of necessity.
Anthony, I want to point out one thing. We saw last year, Josh Allen attempted 100 fewer passes than his career norm. That started when Joe Brady took over in late 2023. This is now a balanced offense. This is no longer the throw the ball 40 times a game. So now if you can, and this is who Allen's going to be going forward, because this is what this offense is going to be. It's going to be spread it out. It's going to be balanced. Allen throwing 473 passes out of 573, and now Josh Palmer's in the mix. Like you said, he could see playing time, but I'm very, very sketchy as to what I think of him. And I see him as a wide receiver 5 or 6. Where do you draft him?
Wide receiver 5, if I'm even drafting him.
Exactly. All right, we have another segment, the winners and losers of free agency day one. Now, I have 2 teams that made the biggest splash. One I think is tangible. You mentioned at the beginning of the show. The other one I think is going to be mostly window dressing. We'll cover these guys quickly. The Bears. They bring in Ben Johnson to coach the offense. They revamped their interior line. That was the problem. They couldn't stop a simulated pressure to save their life last year. Well, they got Joe Tooney probably at left guard. Jonah Jackson, he had injury plagued bad year last year when he went to the Rams. He'll be at right guard probably. And then Drew Dahlman, they got him on a 3-year contract from the Falcons at center. And their 2 tackles are not bad. They're both on rookie contracts. They're better than expected. This is not going to be a bad line. And Caleb Williams is going to help. The Bears also added Grady Jarrett, who just got dumped by the Falcons, and Dio Adegmago, the edge rusher. The Bears scored, and this one's going to hit. This is good. If Caleb Williams is going to be anything, he's in a perfect storm now. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like to joke around every year the Bears win the offseason, or is it going to translate to wins? It doesn't happen this year or the year after. If you want to give Ben Johnson like 2 years, then it's never going to happen for Chicago. They have added so much talent in the past 2 years. When you talk of Caleb Williams, you extend DJ Moore, the offensive line, the defense, this team is really set up in a good place for Ben Johnson to potentially turn it around in year one. He has talent all over the place, and I think the Bears are really smart. They identified, and you don't have to be blind to see it. Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times, 3rd most in NFL history. They had to attack the offensive line this offseason, and they did that. Just those moves alone is a big-time win. And then we see Grady Jarrett, 10-year veteran of the Falcons, coming over, and Deo coming over on the edge. This is only day one. I don't think the Bears are done yet.
And that, Anthony, is the beauty of having a quarterback on a rookie deal. They have 2 more years until they have to pay him, and that's when you go all in. We've seen some teams very smartly do that. We saw the Bengals get to a Super Bowl when they were able to do that. Teams early in Mahomes' career, they were able to prop themselves up by that, and then eventually the bill comes due, and then you can't afford all that luxury, but you got to spend now. This is a quick one, Anthony. The Patriots were a winner, but I don't think it matters. Morgan Moses for the line. He's aging, but he's good. Defensively, they get Milton Williams. He gets the defensive prize of the defensive line, but I don't think he's going to be as good outside of Philly. I think that was a lot. Jalen Carter took a lot of attention, but maybe that's just me being salty. I like Milton Williams. I think that he got overrated because of his team. Harold Landry, the edge, he's not what he was. They got him in Tennessee. Robert Spillane, the linebacker from the Raiders, decent tackler. Cornerback Carlton Davis, again, I don't think he's elite. He's when it broke his jaw with the Lions last year. I think they added numbers and defense. I think that gives them a little bit of a boost, but I don't think it matters. Thoughts?
Yeah, the Patriots added, notable names. They had a lot of money to spend, and they're spending it on day one. I think it's fine. They're bolstering this defense. New England's always had a good defense. Mike Vrabel's always had a good defense. But when are you going to start tackling the offensive side of the ball? You have this nice young quarterback in Drake May. I don't love this wide receiver room. I think it's really a bunch of guys there right now. It's fine. You want to build this defense, but at some point you have to address the offensive side of the ball, especially playing in a conference and an AFC East. You got Miami. Like all these teams can score points. I know you beat Cincy in week one. That was the Bengals always start slow, but like if you get Cincinnati in November, you're going to probably get pummeled. Like you need to be able to score points in this league, and I don't know if New England can do that with the offensive personnel they have.
Hey, want to win more in your golf, March Madness, and football pools? Pool Genius gives you the data-driven picks and strategies to outsmart the competition. With over a decade of analytics and historical data, Pool Genius is the only site dedicated exclusively to helping people win sports pools. With Pool Genius, users winning 3 times more often than expected. RotoWire listeners get exclusive offers. You visit poolgenius.com/RotoWire for up to 55% off or start a 4-day free trial. Again, that's poolgenius.com/RotoWire. Anthony, a couple final thoughts. Are the running backs that get any love? Aaron Jones is the only one that went. We still have players on the market like Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle. Is that going to hit or is this going to take a while?
Because there's so many names, we could potentially see a few days go by before we start seeing these dominoes drop because, first day of free agency, what usually happens, bad teams overpay or even, good teams, they'll overpay to go get a guy. The big value comes the longer teams wait. So, and because there's a lot of edge rushers and a lot of linebackers, I mean, a lot of running backs, I think those are two positions that we might see a few days go by before these big names are scooped up.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think it's like last year, there were good running backs out there. Teams spent up. I don't know why the Bears picked DeAndre Swift out of that group. Neither here nor there. But teams spent up, and it was Derrick Henry, and it was Saquon Barkley, and it really reset the marketing. Aaron Jones, there was a deal with him that day too. But it was definitely something. But again, this is a different class. This is a different class of running backs. Chubb's been injured, and there's not in. Najee Harris, I think anybody really is convinced he's the answer. Javonte Williams has struggled. Dobbins hasn't been healthy. Dowdle hasn't shown it long enough. So I think this is going to be a bargain bin basement one. Teams are, like you said, they're going to be able to get good bargains on those. Also, still a quick hit on some players that haven't been signed. Just tell me where you think they're going to go. Where's Aaron Rodgers going to end up?
Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to say Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, I like Minnesota. I think Minnesota would be the best fit for him.
Minnesota.
And if Minnesota just can't stomach it, then he probably goes to the Giants. But maybe he won't play there. Maybe Aaron Rodgers will say, you know what? I'm not doing this. I could see it. He'd be in the same stadium as he was last year. For what that's worth, nothing. Nick Chubb, where does he end up?
Oh, I'm going to say Nick Chubb, Pittsburgh.
I love Pittsburgh. And my other one, I like the Chargers. Go playing for Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, and they got the line. Yeah, I think, but I like the Steelers there. It's my second one. How about Darius Slayton?
Ooh.
I think he goes to Dallas.
Darius Slayton. I can see Slayton going to New England. And again, as much as they need offensive firepower, there's not a ton of it, and I think he's a nice value pickup.
He had like 3 700-yard seasons with bad quarterback play. He's a good player. Somebody is going to get something that they really didn't see coming. How about Evan Ingram? Where does he end up?
Colts.
Oh, I like the Colts.
Yep.
Is
And
it?
Mo Alley Cox and Granson are both free
They're
agents.
both gone.
Yeah.
And I think Juwan Johnson does go to the Broncos. I think that's the best spot for him. I know Evan Ingram this morning, as of this recording, was in Denver, but I hadn't heard anything yet. Juwan Johnson, he played under Sean Payton. He's a converted wide receiver. When he gets opportunity, he's very good. So I think that could work as well. Anything on Juwan Johnson?
Yeah, I'm gonna go the easy route. Juwan Johnson has the ties to Sean Payton, and I know a lot of times it just seems like Sean Payton likes getting his old players. So I'm
He
gonna go
does.
with the easy landing spot.
Yeah, so we'll agree on that one. Hey, remember, free agency updates. You make sure you're following RotoWire on the X and on Blue Sky at RotoWire. All our socials. We'll have videos, all free agency coverage. We'll have that set for you. And we want you to be a part of the RotoWire community on our new and improved Discord server. We'll share fantasy advice, find a prop bet detail, and interact with some of your favorite RotoWire experts. How do you do it? You join the conversation at rotowire.com/chat. Again, rotowire.com/chat. This Thursday, March 13th, depending when you're listening to the show, join RotoWire's Joe Bartle for a quick Q&A session from 2 to 4 Central Time. So that's 3 to 5 Eastern. He'll answer all your fantasy football questions as the early free agency dust settles. We want to thank our sponsors, Pool Genius and Edge Boost. Thanks to everyone for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.